Imagine a man who dreamed of becoming a great writer but had to battle poverty, family struggles, and the skepticism of publishers. A man who created one of the most iconic characters in literary history, Sherlock Holmes, yet sometimes resented him, believing he overshadowed his serious works. This is Arthur Conan Doyle, a doctor, writer, dreamer, adventurer, and the man who forever changed detective fiction. Today, we'll dive into his life, uncover how Sherlock Holmes was born, and explore why this character became a cultural legend. This lecture is a journey through Conan Doyle's childhood, his struggles, his creative torments, and a detailed analysis of his most famous works. We'll discuss how Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson became more than just characters, they became symbols of human intellect, friendship, and the pursuit of justice. And, of course, we'll touch on fascinating facts about Doyle himself, from his medical practice to his fascination with spiritualism. Ready? Let's begin. Biography of Arthur Conan Doyle, from poverty to literary fame. Childhood and youth, a difficult start. Arthur Conan Doyle was born on May 22, 1859, in Edinburgh, Scotland, into a family of Irish Catholics. His father, Charles Altamont Doyle, was a talented artist but struggled with alcoholism and mental health issues, making family life unstable. His mother, Mary Foley, was a strong woman who held the family together despite financial hardship. It was she who instilled in young Arthur a love for literature, regaling him with tales of knights, adventures, and heroic deeds. Arthur's childhood was far from easy. The family often teetered on the edge of poverty, and he learned early on that he would have to rely on himself. At age 9, he was sent to a Jesuit boarding school in England, where he faced strict rules and physical punishments. Yet, it was there that Arthur began crafting stories to entertain his classmates, a first glimpse of his storytelling talent. Medical education and early literary attempts. At 17, Arthur enrolled in the medical faculty at the University of Edinburgh. The choice of profession was driven by practicality. Medicine promised a stable income, something his family desperately needed. During his studies, he met Dr. Joseph Bell, a professor who amazed students with his ability to deduce details about a person based on minor clues, their behavior, clothing, or gestures. Bell became a key inspiration for Sherlock Holmes, though Doyle later admitted he added much of his own imagination to the character. To pay for his education, Arthur worked as a doctor's assistant and even sailed as a ship's surgeon on a whaling vessel to the Arctic. These experiences toughened him but also showed him that medicine wasn't his true calling. In his spare time, he wrote short stories and sent them to magazines. His early efforts were largely unsuccessful, with publishers often rejecting his work as too simplistic or unmarketable. Personal life and financial struggles. In 1885, Doyle married Louisa Hawkins, whom he affectionately called Tooey. She became his pillar of support, but their family life was complicated by financial difficulties. After graduating, Arthur opened a medical practice in Southsea, but patients were scarce. He spent hours in an empty office, waiting for clients, and used this time to write. It was during this period that the first drafts of Sherlock Holmes stories began to take shape. Conan Doyle faced constant rejections from publishers. His early novels, such as The Firm of Girdlestone, were unsuccessful, and he felt his dreams of a literary career slipping away. Yet he persevered. In 1886, he began working on A Study in Scarlet, the first story featuring Sherlock Holmes. The birth of Sherlock Holmes, a spark of genius. How did the idea come about? The idea for Sherlock Holmes emerged when Conan Doyle realized readers craved a new kind of hero, not just a detective, but a genius who solved crimes through logic and observation. Dr. Joseph Bell was a key inspiration, but Doyle also drew from literature. For instance, Edgar Allan Poe's Detective C. Auguste Dupin influenced Holmes' creation, though Doyle believed his character was more human and relatable. Sherlock Holmes was designed to be unique, cool-headed, rational, yet eccentric, with quirks like playing the violin or using cocaine, which, at the time, was not considered unusual. Dr. Watson, in contrast, was conceived as the voice of the reader, an ordinary man who admired Holmes' genius and helped readers understand his complex mind. First publications and reader response. In 1887, A Study in Scarlet was published in Beeton's Christmas Annual. The response was lukewarm. Readers noticed the story, but it wasn't a sensation. Publishers paid Doyle meager fees, and he continued to struggle financially. However, in 1891, when Holmes stories began appearing in the Strand magazine, everything changed. Short, Dynamic tales like A Scandal in Bohemia were perfect for the magazine format, and readers were hooked. Sherlock Holmes quickly became a public favorite. People lined up for new issues of The Strand, and Doyle received hundreds of letters from fans. The success was overwhelming, but for the author, it became a burden. Creative and personal struggles, the shadow of Sherlock, fatigue from Holmes. Despite the commercial success, Conan Doyle grew tired of Sherlock Holmes. He considered the detective stories light literature that distracted him from more serious works, historical novels like The White Company or The Adventures of Brigadier Gerard. In letters to his mother, he complained that Holmes took up all his time and hindered his creative ambitions. In 1893, Doyle decided to kill off his character. In The Final Problem, Sherlock meets his demise in a confrontation with Professor Moriarty, falling into the Reichenbach Falls. The public's reaction was astonishing. Readers sent angry letters, cancelled subscriptions to The Strand, and some even wore black armbands in mourning. Legend has it that one reader called Doyle a brute for killing their beloved hero. The return of Holmes, under pressure from readers and publishers, and driven by financial needs, especially after the death of his wife Louisa in 1906, Doyle was forced to bring Holmes back. In 1903, The Empty House revealed that Holmes had survived, hiding after his clash with Moriarty. Readers rejoiced, but Doyle felt he had sacrificed his creative freedom for commercial success. Shifting focus, spiritualism and other projects. In later years, Doyle became increasingly engrossed in spiritualism, especially after personal tragedies, the deaths of his wife, brother, and son during World War I. He wrote books on spiritualism and gave lectures, but these projects never gained the popularity of his Holmes stories. Readers wanted detectives, not mystical treatises, which left Doyle frustrated. Iconic works in the series, analyzing masterpieces. A Scandal in Bohemia, 1891. This was the first short story in the series, introducing Irene Adler, the only woman to outwit Holmes. The plot revolves around Holmes' attempt to retrieve a compromising photograph for the King of Bohemia. The story is unique in showing Holmes not as an invincible genius but as someone who can be bested. Irene Adler became a symbol of female strength and intellect, and the phrase to Sherlock Holmes, "She was always the woman," entered literary history. The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1901 to 1902. This novel is arguably the most famous in the series. The story of the Baskerville family curse, a terrifying hound, and mysterious events on the Dartmoor moors blends detective fiction with Gothic elements. Doyle masterfully builds suspense through vivid descriptions of the landscape and psychological tension. Notably, Holmes appears only midway through, allowing Watson to take on the role of lead investigator. The Empty House, 1903. This story marked Holmes' return from the dead. It details the solving of a murder and explains how Holmes survived the Reichenbach Falls. Doyle uses the element of surprise to shock readers and introduces a new antagonist, Colonel Moran, a Moriarty associate. The Valley of Fear, 1914 to 1915. This novel combines a detective story with a narrative about American secret societies. Holmes investigates a murder linked to Moriarty's activities. The story is notable for its structure. The first part is a classic detective tale, while the second is a historical drama about mining conflicts in America. Themes and style. The Sherlock Holmes stories are distinguished by their clear structure, a mystery, an investigation, a climax, and a resolution. Doyle employs the method of deduction, though it's more accurately induction, to show how Holmes pieces together a crime from small details. His style is concise yet vivid, with attention to detail and dialogue. The stories often explore themes of justice, morality, human weaknesses, and the fight against evil. The Holmes-Watson duo, a perfect partnership. The dynamic between Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson is the heart of the series. Holmes is a cold, rational genius who often seems detached from human emotions. Watson is his opposite, warm, empathetic, and guided by a strong moral compass. Together, they create a perfect balance. Holmes solves mysteries, while Watson humanizes him, helping readers connect with his complex character. This duo became a prototype for many literary partnerships. For example, the relationship between Batman and Robin or modern characters like House and Wilson in House MD echoes Holmes and Watson. Their friendship is not just professional but a deep mutual respect that makes the stories so compelling. Fascinating facts about Conan Doyle. War service. During the Anglo-Boer War, 1899 to 1902, Doyle served as a doctor in a field hospital in South Africa. His book on the war earned him a knighthood in 1902. Medical practice. Though a trained doctor, Doyle often joked that his office was empty because everyone knew he was more a writer than a physician. Spiritualism. After personal tragedies, Doyle became a devoted spiritualist. He even fell out with his friend Harry Houdini, who considered spiritualism a fraud. Public advocacy. Doyle used Holmes-like methods to investigate real cases, helping free two wrongfully convicted men, George Adelgy and Oscar Slater. Cultural impact of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is more than a character, he's a symbol of intellect, logic, and the pursuit of truth. His influence spans literature, Agatha Christie, Rex Stout, film, Robert Downey Jr.'s movies, the Sherlock series with Benedict Cumberbatch, theater, and even science. For instance, Holmes' methods inspired criminologists to develop deductive approaches to investigations. Shows like Elementary and Sherlock adapt Holmes to modern times while preserving his essence, the quest for truth. In popular culture, Sherlock is an archetype of genius, and phrases like elementary, my dear Watson, have become part of everyday language. Conclusion: the eternity of Sherlock Holmes and Conan Doyle's legacy. Sherlock Holmes is not just a character, he's a cultural phenomenon that outlived his creator and continues to captivate millions. Arthur Conan Doyle may not have fully realized the impact his hero would have on the world. His stories about Holmes are not only detective puzzles but profound reflections on human nature, justice, and friendship. They remind us that intellect, observation, and perseverance can overcome any obstacle, and true friendship is what makes us human. Conan Doyle created Sherlock at a time when he was grappling with personal and professional struggles. Ironically, the character he sometimes saw as a burden became his greatest achievement. Holmes embodies the pursuit of truth, a timeless aspiration. His methods are not just a literary device but a way of thinking that inspires scientists, writers, filmmakers, and everyday people. From forensic labs to modern TV shows, from theater stages to social media memes, Sherlock Holmes is everywhere. Why does Holmes remain relevant? Because he's more than a detective. He represents the hope that chaos can be ordered, that truth always prevails, and that even the most complex mysteries have solutions. Watson, in turn, reminds us of the importance of humanity, empathy, and support. Together, they create a balance that resonates with every reader. My opinion? Conan Doyle is a testament to the power of perseverance. Despite all his struggles, he left behind something eternal. His life was full of contradictions. He dreamed of historical novels but became famous for detective stories. He sought answers in spiritualism but gave the world a symbol of rationality. Sherlock Holmes is not just a character but a mirror reflecting our own aspirations for knowledge, justice, and understanding. Though Doyle sometimes grew weary of his hero, it was Holmes who made him immortal. Conan Doyle's legacy is not just his books but the cultural impact we feel today. Every new film, series, or book about Sherlock is a tribute to the man who sat in an empty South Sea office, crafting stories to escape reality. Those stories became reality for millions, and I believe they will remain so for generations to come. Sherlock Holmes didn't just survive the Reichenbach Falls, he survived time itself, and that is his true magic.